But let's go to verse 3. It says, praise his name with dancing. Praise his, with dancing accompanied by tambourine and harp. Now, we know that David danced before the Lord with all his might. If you go back to 2 Samuel, chapter 6, Second Samuel 6, verse 12. So this is when David is bringing the ark to Jerusalem, the Ark of the Covenant. 6:12. And when he brought that, remember, he didn't go into the temple. The temple wasn't built. He went into the tabernacle. So, 6:12. Then King David was told, the Lord has blessed Obed-Edom's home and everything he has because the ark of God. So David went there and brought the ark to the city of David with a great celebration. The men who were carrying it had gone 6 steps. They stopped and waited so David could sacrifice an ox before the Lord and a fattened calf. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, wearing a priestly tunic. And if you're not sure what that means or what that looked like or how extreme that was, you're going to see in just a moment. So David and all Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with much shouting and blowing of trumpets. But as the ark of the Lord entered the city of David, Michal, some say Michael, I've heard a lot of people pronounce that a lot of different ways. The daughter of Saul looked out from her window. When she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she was filled with contempt for him. The ark of the Lord was placed inside the special tent that David had prepared for it, and David sacrificed burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord. When he had finished, David blessed the people in the name of the Lord Almighty. Then he gave a gift of food to every man and woman in Israel, a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins, and some tasty cakes. Then everyone went home. When David returned home to bless his family, Michal came out to greet him and said in disgust, how glorious the king of Israel looked today. He exposed himself to the servant girls like any indecent person might do. That gives you an idea of how extremely he was dancing. Now again, she may have blown it up, but he was dancing. Verse 21, David retorted to Michal, I was dancing before the Lord, who chose me above your father and his family. There's a slam. Her father was Saul. He appointed me as a leader of Israel, the people of the Lord. So I am willing to act like a fool in order to show my joy for the Lord. Yes, and I'm willing to look even more foolish than this. But I will be held in honor by the girls of whom you've spoken. So Michal, the daughter of Saul, remained childless throughout her life. So the question is, what do you do with this? It says here that in Psalm 149, praise his name with dancing, accompanied by tambourine and harp. David danced with all his might. Does that mean that we should have dancing on Sunday mornings? That we should have people dancing down the aisles? So let's talk about that, because you're going to run into this if you haven't already. The commentator Barnes says this, quote, such a movement cannot be proved to be wrong in worship, but whether it is wise or expedient is a different matter. Customs in worship change as customs of a people change. And that might be very proper in one stage of society or in one period of the world, which though not in itself wrong, might be very unadvisable in another. There was much in the Hebrew mode of worship which cannot be transferred to the forms of Christian worship without an obvious incongruity and disadvantage. And because a thing has been done and is not in itself wrong, we should not infer that it should always be done or that it would always be the best. I wanted to have a video here, and I looked it up and I couldn't get it recorded. But when Sue and I were in Israel, we were there one Friday night, which is when they begin their Shabbat, their celebration of their Sabbath. And in front of the Western Wall, they don't like to call it the Wailing Wall, by the way. That to a Jew, that's a slam. To call it the Wailing Wall, they want it called the Western Wall. But at the Western Wall, The people gather. The place just floods with people. And they dance. They just form circles, and men by themselves, women by themselves, and they just spin around, kicking their legs out and dancing, and then somebody goes in the middle, and then they kind of, lead the thing, and the circle gets bigger and bigger. Guys come and jump in, and they let them in, and it's all, the place just filled with concentric circles spinning the whole night. It's just amazing. And young people. Everybody there is required to give military service for 1 year when they're 18, I think it is. So you have all these 18-year-olds in military garb, men and women, girls and guys, their guns strapped to them, dancing around on a Friday night. It's amazing. Now, if we would have tried to do that back in my brethren church, especially the AK-47s, that wouldn't have gone over so well. But there's a place and a time. There's an appropriateness to it. Calvary Distinctives, which Chuck Smith wrote, talks about this. Let me just read what he says. He says, the question is, when this occurs, the focus is taken off of Jesus and placed under the person. The eye is interesting because it's attracted to motion. In many cases, I've seen those who stand up by themselves, all alone in worship, and because they conclude they're not getting enough attention, so they start to stand and sway. Now that's eye-catching, but it's also distraction. Suddenly people are wondering what they're doing. I believe it's important for these things because displays like those can cause people to lose prospective members to the church. If I went into a church and that was happening, I might think that the sermon was great.